if we look here at the bottom of my screen, you'll see I am remoted into 4 systems where I am currently running GSA website contact. And oh, this does not look too good here. So let's take a look at all them. This one looks like she's doing pretty good. Not bad. Not bad. Okay? Now, there's a number of different logistics going on between these systems and what I've been doing. And so, in recent weeks, I had a lot of problems with various proxies and proxies getting, I was getting proxy errors, and so I tested several different companies and even wound up going back. I canceled one company and they came back and said, hey, we fixed your proxies, we gave you a free month, please try them again, and they worked. So that being said, in these different scenarios, I want to take a look at, like, this list is that I'm running comes from these are all running from purchased lists that I purchased, general website contact form lists. Okay, there's no rhyme or reason, they're not targeted. And this one says April. So I'm still running from an April USA based list of 100,000. Okay? And that list is older because we're already in July and other people buy that list. And so there is a possibility that many of these sites are not going to, they may have spam filtering, or they may have moved their contact form or done a number of other things. So I have some varying, even though I'm running old lists at the same time, on one system, see this? I'm running a list from June. And I just got my July list. They came out late this year. And so right now, with these 4 scenarios, I'm running, there's something going on here. Bad thing. So I'm going to pause this because I don't want this campaign going so far south, but I've got proxy banned. And in all 4 of these scenarios, what I'm doing is I'm running my GSA with proxies scraped. Now, just be aware that I did a couple of scenarios where I actually put 2,500 HTTP proxies in, IPv4s, IPv4s. And that they ran well, but then I also tested with scrape proxies and back and forth, a combination of both the private and the public proxies that I scraped. And I realized I was just getting, mostly I could get just as good as a result with my scraping proxies. So let's just take a look. Like, this is what one of my projects would look like. So we go into our project settings, and look, even if we were scraping, it would be the same thing. But we're not scraping with these scenarios. So we're using a list, and here what we want to do is we want to check use proxies for sending. So now we're going to get the proxy dialog box here. Now, something you need to understand about this is the same for all of GSA's products. They have it built in. So if you just get something as small as GSA's search engine indexer, it has this product built in. All of their products have these free proxy scrapers. So let's just take a look at how you're going to configure that. First, we go over to the options. And in this case, we're not using private, we're using public. And I like to set this for every 30 minutes. And I'll either put 1,000 or 1,500 proxies I want it checking. And that's really it for this. I'm not doing any other magical stuff. But what we want to do when we go over to the list, what we want to do is we want to add proxy sites. Now, by default, they'll just have a couple of things checked in here. So I like to go down here to, like, free proxy. I look for things with .com extension, .net. I don't want to mess with Russian extension, especially, with the war in Ukraine right now. There's a lot of IP blocking. They're cut off from us. We're cut off from them. So I don't really want to get involved with that, but I add some extras. Okay, that's probably going to do it. They've got a pretty extensive list here, you know, proxy, fast socks, blog socks, proxy free list. Okay, so now we need to beef that list up a bit more. And just a little tip with that, if you're getting enough proxies, especially like if you use paid proxies in this scenario, what you'll notice is, like, one thing we see here, when we see these colored fields of activity going right up to the top here, as opposed to, well, here, see, again, we're going up to the top. That means the contact software is not running fast enough or processing enough, and that could be a sign that it's not getting enough proxies. Whereas here, we've got a pretty good processing rate going on. Let's go back to the fourth one. Again, not bad, but sometimes these will be going where I'll have to stretch the view out on this so much because the processing will just, you know, we won't really see the activity. It'll go so far down and deep. So a bit of an indicator there by how many you see processing by that have completed with a response will give you an indicator how well your proxies are running. And you know, you could always stop and try to scrape some more, change that setting. So that being said, that's how I would do that in here. You know, same thing. So when we go to add proxies, what we want to do is we want to select find, online, and test. Now that we've got it configured. And generally, you know, once I'm going to start up a campaign, I like to get that going right away while I'm messing around with my other stuff. You want that running in the background, getting some lead time on scraping proxies before you're going to begin to run. So I just want you to kind of see, in the sense that, you know, I know where everyone wants to go is they want to know, like, well, for every 10,000 posts, how many responses do you get? You know, we're going to take a look at that because all of these campaigns are for the same thing. They are all using the same bit.ly short link. So we're going to take a look at that because it's not what you think. If you expect that out of 10,000, you're going to get 1,000 or 1 in 10, you're not. It's going to be less. And we're going to talk about those logistics. Now, again, let's go back to logistics and how I'm having problems and how I'm trying to figure them out, because let's look at some of these numbers here. You see, I run my list in increments of 100,000. And generally, what we really like to see is like a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio, or 3-to-2. You know, generally 4-to-1 is optimal. For every successful sent, 1 failed. That's my objective. Although I was not reaching those objectives here. And that's not always the case, as I've had problem campaigns, as you can see. That sometimes here, 64 to 34. So it was kind of a 2-to-1, you know. Had some ones that, you know, they're running. Now this one was just doing terrible. In fact, it's a little more than 1-to-1, but it was way down. It was 1-to-3 or 1-to-4. They were failing. And so I had to get in there and figure out why. And I said, hey, this is a newer list. Common sense dictates I would have a higher success rate, because on the other systems, I was not getting, you know, good success rates. Started off bad. So then I had to really break down the pieces. And what I did is, once I get my proxies running right, and I'm using cold proxies, and I'll put a link to that and some of the ones that I'm using down in the description. And I'm using cold proxy IPv6 for the XEvil. So what I wound up doing is turning the proxy off, submitting without proxies, and I ran a VPN, Surfshark, which has an IP rotation, but I kept changing the location too every few minutes. And this was just while I was sitting at the machine to do testing and to see, you know, what the impact of one on the other is. Because, like, it's important to understand with proxies, I'm using cold proxy. Sometimes I've used proxy seller, and right now I'm using proxy scrape also, which is another nice proxy. But they don't all work the same. Now, with cold proxy here, my proxies, I can set either authenticate by IP, but I don't want to authenticate by IP address because I would prefer to run a VPN and keep my systems behind the VPN and not expose my own IP address. But if I want to use proxy scrape, which I would use for my, if I want to add into GSA, I would use those type in here. Problem is, then I have to register that IP address. I can only register up to 3 IP addresses for authentication with the 2,500 IP addresses I got with this package. So that's a little bit limiting. Not totally. I could divide things up on different systems, but that's why I wanted to get to back to totally scraping like I was before. But I wasn't sure, why am I having a problem now when I wasn't having a problem prior? So, I start trying to break down the pieces. And fortunately, because I have 4 systems, I ran different scenarios. But the logistics didn't stop with just the proxies. They got a bit more involved because there were other things going on here. And clearly, while this was going much better earlier on, it's not doing too good. So we'll have to get to the heart of that and see what's going on with this, which I probably won't get to in this video, but I'm going to have to come back to this one so we can see. Now see this? This is probably going to need an adjustment where I'm not getting enough proxies here into the process. And what I can do is stop this project and let's put something in here. Okay, let me pause the video, make sure I've got the proxy list on this system, and I'm going to add pay proxies into the scenario, and let's see what happens. But I also want to make some adjustments on this, so I don't want to go too far off the path of the things that I'm doing because I have to keep my head wrapped around all these systems and the changes that I make. Alright, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on this video, but at least you can see also how to add paid proxies in. So we're going to go to our submission content, use proxies for sending, configure. We were already configured. I was in here messing around, and we're going to go add proxies, and you could just select these down from the list. Oh, here. Add proxy. Go to my proxy list. Proxies, come on, there it is, and this is the one I'm looking for, and now I got that. Yes, well, we don't have to test these because we know they work, okay? But over here, we want to make sure that we have our private checked, okay, which I did already, and so now we're good to go. But actually, while I'm here, let me look at my add. Let's see what we got here. Now, just be aware. Sometimes some of these are not going to help us. So no matter what, we need to make sure that we test. So when we go here, when we go find online and test. Okay, so now we're good to go. We're running. Now, since I stopped this project, when I go to start it again, oh, alright, it's going to pick up where it left off. But sometimes it'll give you a message about the list, and you want to say no. Because if you say no, then it's basically, if you say yes, you're basically going to be finished. If you say no, it's going to go back to the rest of the list. So you don't get confused about that message when you start and stop a project. Okay? So now we get this going again, and I'll give this some time, and we'll see where this is going to go. But this is just part of what I wanted to talk about. Now, in the actual setup, okay, what we basically do here is you got to understand how this thing is trying to be stealthy. So it's basically using random first name. And you can see there are different options that you can set here that basically they have a little link here to macros help. And this gives you the list of all the little macros that instead of if you didn't select one of these options, if you decide to manually input, you can put the information you want in here by just copying and pasting these little macros right into the project. So that's very useful when you want to start to tinker around with a few things here. Now going back to our project settings, for the most part, in any real project, only thing you're really going to set here is your message that's going to be contained inside the email, and you're going to want to use like a bit.ly short link rather than your own actual website link, because you want to be able to track the results. The other thing is going to be your subject line. Okay, and you see I've got a macro in here, domain, that inserts the URL from the site that it is submitting into that. Okay, so that it gives it a sense of uniqueness in that the subject actually has the URL of the person's website that it's actually submitting the contact form. Okay, pretty simple. So, but by default, we see that this is using random first name, random last name, random name, self-described, random email. Okay, and so it's creating all of these random emails. And so let's talk about logistics, okay, in another context, because now I'm submitting all of these. Let's just look here, right? I'm submitting to all these sites. So these are all my successful sends over these campaigns. 35, 171 to, see, here's a nice one, 71 to 25. Pretty much a 4-to-1. But they haven't, again, 71 to 25. A lot of these campaigns, there were some I didn't complete or whatever, but also not everyone was a winner. I've had issues with campaigns. And this was because of the proxies. But now that I've got my proxy issue settled down, I should be back to a 4-to-1 ratio. And so when things go wrong, the idea is you're trying to find out and figure out what is going to bring you the highest success rate. Is it that my lists are purchased and they're old because I'm running from April and there's already been May, June, and now July, and I'm going to be putting a July list in since I just got them but 2 or 3 days ago to see if those are better. But remember, I'm using someone else's list. In the meantime, I've got 3 systems behind me that are scraping lists that I'm trying to choose what I feel are website categories that are much more active, competitive, and may have a higher response or receptiveness to the type of campaigns that I'm promoting for my services. Okay? So that being said, you have to understand how, after, let's just assume I get 4-to-1. Beautiful, right? If out of 100,000, even if I just get 75,000 successfully sent, how many of those are really, really successfully sent? And to understand that, well, we have to understand how a spam filter works. Now, on my websites and client websites, I use CleanTalk Anti-Spam, which is a third-party integration with WP Forms and SMTP, the form sending plugin. So it's basically like a three parts where I use WP Forms, an SMTP plugin, and anti-spam. And the 3 of these things tie together. So this is for SEO Depot, and this shows contact form denied, contact form denied, contact form denied. Because, let me just back up. Here's my list for this where I could go and see my spam. And what's happening? Let's look at the details, because this is actually capturing it. And what they're doing is they are using this. These are examples of people using GSA contact or perhaps Scrapebox to submit to contact forms. And what's happened is these have simply been captured and taken and placed in a spam box. I never see them. Okay? Now, there are a few instances where someone gets blocked because they're using a VPN or their email address. They're actually manually submitting the form and they complete the mission. So I check those against this list to see if there's any in here, in which case, if there is, like I have a client, he's global. A lot of people hit the contact form. They're coming from countries. They're using banned IP addresses, even though the lead is legitimate. So we have to go and track those down. They get captured in the contact forms database because I use the abandonment form additional module, which WP Forms. WP Forms is, if you're not familiar with, is probably the leader at contact forms, and they have a lot of modules, additional modules. So it's a very pro setup. But that being said, let's look at the details here, because if we click on this right here, this person, it'll tell us that this was reported as spam. And we can scroll down and recently blacklisted spam emails. See that? So let's step back here. Let's look at it from the IP address perspective. Same user, recently blacklisted spam IPs. Now see what's happening? This was the sender's email. This system is working for tens of thousands of people across the web, and it's getting information from blacklists that are freely available out there that everyone can just do a search. And if you're not familiar with blacklist tools, hold on to check. And in case you also want to check that your own IP address gets blacklisted, now, if you go to the MX Toolbox at mxtoolbox.com, you can select blacklist, okay? You can put your IP address in, and as you can see, my fixed IP address is clean. Beautiful, okay? But these systems feed these lists, and that's where this info is coming from. And so we could see that basically this person is running fake email, doing the same thing what our product here, GSA, is doing. It's creating random emails, but they're coming all from the same IP address. And this is the reason why we need proxies, so that they all come from different IP addresses. Now, here are some of the things that I have been experimenting with. And of course, I have and own, well, don't own, but operate my own VPS with websites on it, and I have full access. But of course, as long as you have a website and you have domain names or a domain name, you can configure email accounts. So one thing you can do is you can configure a catch-all email account inside of cPanel. I'm not going to cover that here. You can Google it. Inside the cPanel, there is an option. The term is catch-all email account. So, for example, in a catch-all email account, here's what we could do. We could take we have these tags here. So what we could do is we could take a random domain title, keywords, which is the names. Here we go. Random first name, random last name, right? So now, let's say I want to do these with my own email address. Okay? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select self-defined. Okay? Hit OK. And now this dialog is going to come up. And now I could do this. I could do this random. Sorry for the interruption. House phone going off. I got the random first name and random last name. And what we want to do is put a dot in there like that. So we've got like first name dot last name, and now what I got is I go like this at SEO-depot.com. See that? And that's going to give me, just generate random first name, random last name, and I've got a catch-all that says any name that comes to my domain name, put it in this mailbox. So I've got a special mailbox just designated for that approach. That's one way to go about it. Now, another thing that I did was I experimented with, I made 10 domain names, and they went like this. Sales 1 at SEO Depot. Okay? So instead of the random names, and then what I did is I put spin tags like so. So I made sales 1, breaker bar, sales 2, breaker bar, sales 3, breaker bar, sales 4, breaker bar, and let me just put the quotes in there. So this example here, this will cycle through sales 1, sales 2, sales 3 at SEO Depot. Understand? But I began to realize, regardless of that, when you start to analyze what's actually going on over here with the spam filters, I was like, am I having a good enough success rate with that, right? So now I'm trying to gauge what my success rate is. So this is where you really gotta, you're gonna feel things out to the end. So now I'm doing random emails, but I'm also gonna make sure I've got random IP addresses. And the other thing that I didn't do is actually test this. What I should have done is also added my own website into the list, or do a test to my own website and see if it triggers the spam filter after I've been running. But there were some very interesting things that wound up happening. But let's just stop, because what we're trying to do here is reason out some different ways to affect the logistics of the setup. So there's one other thing. So obviously you guys want to see is the actual end result of the actual tracking. So let's just take a look at that too. Okay, I'm going to just pause. Now, this is my bit.ly link for SEO Depot, and you can see I've had 18,565 clicks over a few months of me running campaigns. Now, I don't really kind of pay attention to what the daily clicks are. At this point, I have a feel of if I'm running 2 campaigns or if I'm running 4 campaigns, what they should feel like in terms of how much activity I'm getting on the website, my visitors. Because generally, as a rule, I've found that almost any campaign you'll get somewhere between 200 to 400 clicks that someone will actually come in from your, even if you do an affiliate. These are some old ones I did. This is for tracking for my web thing, but these were just some tests I did back in the day. Right Sonic, I did something. I got 899 clicks. I had a good response from 1 or 2. I think I only did like two campaigns for that. Vidly, 462 clicks. Mooseend, 181. A lesser, appealing product. Not everybody needs bulk emailing, automated services. So it's for, so I messed around with a few things to see what kind of clicks I would get from the campaign. And you could see I'd get like about, these average numbers from the campaign. Look, this one not very good, 91 clicks. So it really just depends. They can really vary by the appeal. How much of that was my messaging, my subject, my message, But those were just some tests for some affiliate things that I tried that didn't, not that they didn't work out well. I had a few purchases here and there, but not enough that, hey, it's not, I'm going to make $1,000 a day or $4,000 a month. Sorry. There are other things that I could run, then. But when I first saw that a lot of guys were talking about, doing affiliate marketing with this, and of course, my emails too are filled with junk things that come in just from the junk mail. And I realized, it's a similar thing to the contact form. I said, how many people are actually responding to these things? So I did some tests, and I just said, well, you're not getting rich with this approach. Possibly then when you start to take the right product to the right targeted people, it's a different ball game. Now, in my case, where I'm selling just my services, it's a winner, okay? Because I'm running campaigns that, look, everybody with a website needs some SEO service. So it's, even though I'm selling backlinking, it's got that appeal, basically, that, hey, everyone needs to be competitive, so they often want to take a look, even if they're not interested in purchasing. Now, how many of those people convert? For my service, it's different. It's not like they just come in and go, yeah, I'm buying this, They need to contact, they have questions, there's a whole sales approach, okay? But one thing is, I have a sense of what is going on, because here, I've got a chat app on my website that is, showing me every time someone comes on the website. You can see here, on my phone, and it's on my tablets, and it's set to send me a message every time someone gets on this site. I get a certain tone, but if they actually communicate, it gets like a ringtone that they're actually trying to respond into the chat app. So I get a very specific sense of what is good activity. So one thing I discovered when I was doing a lot of these tests with the campaigns is that at one point I was just running this June campaign and another campaign, and I was having such issues with the other campaign, there wasn't really any results there to be had. And as a result, though, with this campaign, when I initially started it, I was doing the scenarios that I was just kind of showing you here with the project settings, where I was using real information, using real email accounts that would accept. And even though I'm getting, and in fact, while now I'm doing a little better than 1-to-1, I was way down behind. I was literally like 1-to-4 in the beginning. I was failing so bad, but it rebounded and came back up. And one thing I realized in the use of that I was getting a much higher activity of people actually clicking through and coming to the site. So the success rate, so maybe even though it's only showing 1-to-1, those ones that were getting through, they were really getting through and not getting swallowed up by some spam filter system, because you could see this thing captures everything, and I can see the whole message. I can review this whole message. It keeps everybody, because as you can see, if I go back, currently I'm up to 192. So these are some of my client ones, a couple of dead ones here, but by analyzing how these spam filters work, and they're literally showing us how people, now see this? A lot of these look like free emails created that were being used in a process that were also recently detected spam active emails. So this guy's clearly a marketer. He's using both random emails, and when you see these Outlook.com, Outlook is a very easy make free email, like GSA website contact. It's one of GSA search engine ranker. When you create email accounts and these other softwares where they actually create them, a lot of what they use is Outlook. Very easy to create free accounts. Of course, a lot of them don't last very long, so that's another problem, especially like with the Outlook ones. So just so you know, and look, we even see the number of attack sites. So recognizing how these spam systems pick up on these things, that's why we need to be stealthy. And I was trying to gauge between, well, what if I mix it up with, real emails or catch-all emails, and versus doing everything completely random. So now, while I've worked my way back around to all completely random setups, seeing what's going on with the numbers and the different lists from different months, and getting sort of I'm a little better at gauging out a whole range of logistics with different systems and not getting, my brain too wired out over it, because I'm kind of used to that. And I'm going to go back to trying to do more things with the randomizing, using my own emails with the catch-all and or using Spintax and taking them through like 10 different sales accounts where I'm just catching, and I don't have to answer those email accounts. They're just for the purpose of sending these things. But, you can go in and check, because most likely if somebody actually were to go to the email and try to email you directly from that email rather than clicking on the link, most likely they're doing it to complain rather than contact you, because they're going to click through, they're going to go to the site, and they're going to see, all of this stuff and go the normal road. So that being said, I wanted you to understand these pieces and how I analyze that, looking at, this spam filter information and recognizing how these systems are trying to stop us. So there's a good possibility, really, that despite whatever results I think I'm getting here, now when I'm saying all this is okay, this only means it's okay that X-Evil successfully solved the captcha. And then over here, we've got a good scent thing going on. Now, this was a campaign that I started last week that I restarted, and I'm not sure it's doing too good. See, it's like 1-to-1, and this is why I was trying to figure out, why am I suddenly getting 1-to-1? Is it because these lists have gotten old and I stalled with my campaigns? But like I said, I went to a June list, and I was also having issues. So part of the process is sort of playing with these different metrics to figure out where your real success lies. But to think just because, well, you got a lot of failures, listen, you're going to get a lot of failures. That's just the way it is. That's why this is a big numbers game. And that's why, utilizing Scrapebox, building your own lists, is a really good way to go. And then that's what we're going to get into next, because currently what I'm doing right now is, let me just pause this a second. Now let me just open this system because it just finished a scrape. And what I'm doing currently is I am scraping my own list. And since a lot of people have been asking me where can I get lists, and specifically targeted lists, well, that is what I'm going to do, because I actually found some great value for some clients to build actual contact lists for different industry segments, which they are using successfully to do like email campaigns, direct marketing with. That being said, as I'm trying to create lists, I realize I'm doing it in a much more targeted fashion, in the sense that instead of just trying to get like random websites that have contact forms, but rather specific industry segments, and make them part of a bigger list that I'm hoping will be much more successful and in a general approach, but also like to be able to make those lists available for sale as different industry segments. Part of that is all going to depend on what the sizes of the list are that I can do successfully and how well they can be maintained. But at least for even a very good general list, I believe that I can produce a much better 1 million to 2 million list monthly and have a subscription for you guys with some really good quality stuff. Now, just some tips for you guys if you're scraping your own sites. Like someone asked me, you want to get the locations and your keywords. Go and create a merge list. Get a list of the city and state, and you can Google it, make a little list, get a text file, and you'll have your keywords here, and you merge that file. We have no keywords to merge, but let's just say whatever I'm doing, and then you merge it. For each keyword, you will have the city and state, okay? And searched with that keyword when you merge the list. Now, if you're just using the footprint and you're going to just be looking for contact forms and you just want to build random lists, well, let me tell you something. The holy grail of making that work is by building a good keyword list. And do not use the keyword scraper to scrape from the list of words that you have already. Because what will happen is, ultimately, it's just going to be those scraped keywords come from the same sites. So you're just going to wind up with more and more duplicate URLs. The holy grail to capturing a lot of really good diverse sites is going to be with a good diverse keyword list. And that is going to be a mission to create that list and reuse it over time. And perhaps you'll build multiple lists. But I've seen a few videos online where, hey, somebody said, hey, you can make a list, and look how fast I can make a 2 million list. And he makes it look really fast. However, you don't see the duplicates sorted out at the end. Also, if you don't pay close attention, the list of keywords that he puts in to do his scrape is like 310,000. And just what I saw, like in the viewport up here, he had diverse keywords. They weren't like all about the same thing. Now, what you want to do maybe is get out onto Google and search for keyword lists. There's quite a few resources for things out there that will give you ideas. I'll let you do that on your own, just go out and do a little exploring. But just some tips for that as far as scraping. The other thing is, here's the problem with this, is that when you use the Yelp scraper, you're not going to get contact form URLs. You're going to get pure URLs ultimately. So what we're going to want to do is, what I've done is when I look at the lists I purchase and you analyze them, 90% of the URLs end in either /contact or /contact-us. So you see there's sort of a pattern. So one thing that could be done with some of those lists, once you've scraped them, is to take that list and run it back into Scrapebox and what you could do is then use the merge list, the merge tool, to merge the word contact /contact us, and let it verify every URL that you put in. Actually what you really want to do, you're not going to do that. You want to take your list and use Notepad+. Okay? And you want to take that list with this. See how this is what I got here? These are keyword lists, just happened to open up that I was working on. But with Notepad++, once you take a list of URLs that you've harvested, you can just use Notepad to append anything at the end. And so you could just append to the entire URL list /contact/contact-us. And then Scrapebox has a utility that lets you verify the URLs, and you can just rip through those lists and then take out the ones that check out for contact, which ones check out for contact-us, and merge them. Another thing is, also, GSA website contact doesn't necessarily have to have the actual contact form URL, but it's going to work a lot better if we have it. So in that case, we want to also have it check the list to make sure that the URL is verified. So those are some things I'm still working out the minutia of, but I just want to kind of give you the heads up tip on how to approach it yourself. Because if I'm going to make lists available, I want them to be the highest quality list as possible, so that if you want to be able to take a list and say, churn and burn, because 2 million is a lot to try to run in a month, okay? And if you only got one GSA website contact license, you're not going to be running 2 million a month. You're just not going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to run, maybe at best, if you can run 100,000 every 3 days, do the math, okay? So that being said, I guess 100,000 every 3 days, that's 10 thing, a million. You can run 1 million with one copy. So, to understand, to get a good list, that's a bit of a project. And so, as I get the minutia worked out, then in the coming weeks, I'm going to make that available as soon as possible on darkmarketing.biz. Now, guys, hope you found this video very useful on GSA, that we got into some of the gist of things. But I guess what we'll have to do maybe is, it's already running, is get a part 2 going, where I want to just maybe touch on what are the best settings that I wound up working out in the best scenarios. Because right now, even though I've got 3 of these running, I'm not hearing my messaging going off, and I'm seeing slow processing rates at the top. So I've got to get back in there today, make some adjustments, and get these things firing. Because when I'm running 4 copies of GSA promoting on my website, that thing is going off every minute. Bing, 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 every minute, every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, time.